Welcome everybody to this new episode of the BusinessTelling Talks. Today we're very glad, honored, and incredibly happy to have with us Mr. Rich, the founder, the owner, and the director of INL. So welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you.
And before we start, I have a question I never asked you actually. That is, what does the INL, the name of your company, stand for?
So there's an official story behind that, and then there's the real story behind that. I guess you want both.
Yeah, probably.
The official story, which was kind of reverse engineered, was we're a creative design agency, and we work with big international clients. We only work with big international clients, and that's kind of because my background was in. I started my career at P&G, like you. And that's a kind of a language that I speak and understand. And you know, the reason we're based in Geneva and Singapore is because it's kind of a hub for these big international companies. But when coming from the client side, when I wanted to set up an agency, I wanted to set up an agency that was really good and really small. And the reason for the smallness was because then we could do things differently. We could do things faster. We could bring new perspectives. We could be less expensive than some of our competitor agencies. And we kind of like working for a lot of different companies. So INL stands for international. And it's kind of the smallest way of writing international.
Okay.
That's the official reason. So we're international, but we're small. We're like boutique. Did that sound convincing? That's all.
That sounds convincing, but I want to hear the unofficial one.
So the unofficial one, which is the real reason, is our creative director was a punk. And he had many bands when he was growing up, but one of his bands was called INL Punk.
Okay.
So that's what. So when we started an agency together, he already had the name. He said, you know, I had this great band, INL Punk, and now I want, you know, INL agency, INL, whatever else comes from it. And we've got a few little side things going, but that's the real reason, which I kind of like that more.
So we can say your agency is an international punk.
Yeah.
It stands for that, kind of, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing. Actually, no, that's real. I never know the real story of where INL came from. So I'm happy now that I know that.
Yeah.
And Rich, or Richard, Rich is fine, right?
Rich is fine, yeah.
Rich is fine. Rich, we've been working together in P&G, as you said, a couple of projects. And I remember, and that's also the reason why we invite you here today. You are a very inspiring business leader and a great business storyteller. And what I remember about your capability of really convincing your audience, activating your audience, to follow you on your path, on your journey. In BusinessTelling, we say that any business story is like a journey. And the end goal is to really activate the audience that kind of walk with you through this journey. So as an expert, because you are definitely one of the biggest international experts I know about business storytelling, what does it mean to be effective on creating business stories?
Well, you know, we always say that if you want to change the way people act, then you have to change the way people think about something. And, you know, they currently think this, therefore they do this. You want them to think this, therefore they do this. And often the difference is buying one product and now buying your product. But it's very difficult to change the way people think about something. You know, if a company just put out information to say, our product does this, which your current product doesn't, or our product has this benefit, which your current product doesn't, then, you know, you have to give people a little bit of credit. They see that for what it is, which is propaganda.
Yeah.
They feel like they're being shouted at, and they say, okay, I may believe you, I may not, but it's basically propaganda. So how do you if you want to really convince people, you have to turn your message of propaganda into something credible. And the way you do that, one really nice way of doing that is to have other people say that message. So when you have people all around saying, no, I think this is true, suddenly it feels credible. And a really nice way of doing that is to create stories that people can share, because that's kind of what a story is. It's a message that people like to share and like to hear. And so that's really the jackpot. If you can tell a story that's so compelling someone else will want to share it, then you're halfway to getting your end results, your actionable end result, which is, okay, now I understand this, I will do this differently. I will interact with this company, or I'll buy that product. And I'll give you an example from yesterday, actually. I was talking to somebody who, a very smart lady working for a big international FMCG company, and she's asking for our help to deliver her global marketing conference virtually this year. And we were talking through some of the deliverables that she wants to do, and they all seem very good. And then towards the end of the conversation, she said, oh, I'll also need your help to make my PowerPoint presentation amazing and compelling. And she said, so have a think about that. It's going to be about 40 slides. And I said, oh, that sounds good. So what is it about? And she said, oh, I don't know. I don't have it here with me, so I can't tell you. And I said, well, just give me the gist of it. And she said, well, I can send you what I have at the moment, and you can basically check it out. And what she was basically hinting to was, I've been working on a presentation for 2 weeks, and without it in front of me, I can't really tell you what it's about. So, my reaction was, well, if you're about to present to 200 people on Zoom, and they're going to listen to your presentation for 7 minutes, how do you expect them to remember anything about it if you can't already remember anything about it? So we're now talking to her about, well, what would the benefit of all of these slides? Some of it is giving some information you want people to remember, but a lot of it, I think, and a lot of people, myself included, fall into this trap of, if in doubt, add more information. And I think the reason that people do that is they want to show that they know what they're talking about. They've done their homework. Everyone can relax. I'm an expert because I've done all of this work. But and that can work in a business review meeting when there's 3 people in the room, but in a Zoom call in front of 200 people, it's not the platform to do that. You can build up that with your reputation, and her reputation certainly does that, I think. And then she could spend 6 minutes on 6 slides and tell a story that people will then be able to retell. And then you start to create a movement. You have 200 people who are going out and retelling your story in their own words, and you've really created something. So that's just an example that popped into my head because it was yesterday.
Yeah. So did you craft it to a 6 slide presentation, or is still a work in progress? You're working on it.
We're working on it.
You're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll end up doing is a short 60-second video at the start to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And then just say a couple of things.
Yeah, definitely.
It reminded me of there's a character in the UK called Dominic Cummings, and he was Boris Johnson's mastermind for the Brexit thing. And I'm not a Brexit fan, but about 10 years ago, when Scotland were trying to create their own little parliament and Wales were trying to create their own assembly, different regions of England started saying, well, we should do it as well. And the north of England, where I'm from, there was a bit of a movement to let's become independent from England or have our own assembly. And a lot of the stars from their area were very yeah, we should do this.
Yeah.
And the guy on the opposition, actually, funnily enough, was Dominic Cummings. And what he did was he came out in front of the cameras and he looked like an accountant. And he had a big file under his arm. And people said, well, Alan Shearer is saying it's a great idea. Why is it not a great idea? And he just tapped the folder and said, guys, I've done the work. It just doesn't work. It doesn't add up. It's not going to work. Trust me. And that's all it needed. Everyone went, well, that guy looks pretty serious. If he's done the work, I believe him. So his strategy was just be super credible, and then that's it. Like, that is it. Don't get into arguments about it. Just do that. It's quite interesting because it's a completely opposite approach, but it's very effective.
No, I mean, I hear you. Sometimes, I think for everybody, it's kind of as a common, not effective approach at the beginning to get lost in details, or to get lost of too many things we want to say. And then sometimes we forget why the audience should be interested in what we want to say. Why would be, as you said, what's the benefit behind what we want to say? So based on your experience, you've been working with, big clients, I would say all around the world, because I remember some case study you share with me from South America to Singapore, from North America to Russia, whatever. Which are for you the key? I mean, let's consider like, a business story, like a meal. If you are a chef, actually you're dressed, it could be like a chef. You're a white shirt. I mean, for the people that can see this interview, this talk, it really likes you are Rich the Chef or Chef Rich.
Oh my God, I'm British. I'm British, remember. We're never mistaken for chefs.
Never, exactly. So which are for you the key ingredients that a chef or a teller should put, in the recipe to create a meal that would make the audience feel, wow, I really get, what you wanted to transfer through your story?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that you would need to consider is the taste of the person that you're preparing the meal for, to keep the analogy going. So people are way less interested in your business than you are, whatever your business is. So an example is we've known each other for over 10 years, and you've never asked me what INL stands for. Yeah. And by the way, nobody does.
Nobody does.
That's because it's not really that interesting to you.
Yeah.
And so when I present to a potential new client, for example, I don't give a cred stick. I don't show all the work we've done. Instead, what I'll say is, I've got a hunch you've got two key priorities at the moment. And it's this and this, and I may be wrong. But if I'm right, here are two projects we've done for other clients which are similar. I wonder if they spark something for you. And that's it. Leave it at that. So really understanding what will excite the audience is extremely important. So to go back to the analogy, if you're talking to a group of young people, you might not want to do a 12-course tasting meal. You might just want to do the greatest burger of all time, and then really stick to that. So I think that would be the first thing, is prepare something specifically for who you're talking to. Then I would say surprise them. So, create a bit of theater. And that's why, whenever people go to restaurants, for example, or talks where they really remember it for years and years, there was some theater about the experience and something completely surprising. And one of the reasons that chefs will go to great efforts to make something look like a pear but taste like meat, is because it's thrilling.
Totally
unexpected. It shocks people out of, this is just food, it's something else. So if you can, when you're communicating to somebody, if you can take them along a line and then throw them off, it wakes them up, and it makes them think, oh, this is interesting. I need to engage. I really need to think about it. A great example of that, my mind is all over the place all the time, so apologies for this, but a great example of that is not, don't fall into the trap of telling people what they already know or you already suspect they know, because as soon as you do that, you lose them. So try and go a little bit ahead of them and make them catch up, because if they're having to catch up, they'll be like, they're really focused. They're trying to work out where this is going. They will catch up because audiences are smart. A great example of this is James Bond movies. So at the start of a James Bond movie, it never says 2018, Warsaw, James Bond is currently being, captured by such and such.
Yeah.
It just puts you in a room with James Bond. He looks terrified and someone's coming and he's trying to break out. And you're thinking, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where he is. I don't know if the person coming is a goodie or a baddie, but I'm desperate to find out. And the next thing you know, he's escaped and he's running over the top of something. He jumps off something and he's into a plane. And you're like, okay, now I'm super engaged in this.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to tell everything. So that the surprise, if you can put surprise into it, then it keeps people going. And stand-up comedians use this a lot. They'll start to tell a story. True. And the story goes completely different, and it delights people.
Yeah.
They'll start to laugh, even if it wasn't funny, just at I wasn't expecting that.
The unexpected moment, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is, going back to the analogy, which I've never thought of it like this way, but finish the meal off well. So, if you've built up to something, if you've been serving spicy food, give them something to cool it at the end, which feels like it's well thought out. And the presentation of that is so important. I always think, if you're in a restaurant, you've had a great meal, but then right at the end, the staff aren't attentive, or there's something slightly wrong, it can really ruin the whole experience, because that's the last thing you remember.
Yeah. So
the last thing you do when you finish talking to somebody, or the last thing you do when you produce something, it needs to be really, really a good experience, because hopefully you've told them the story, they understand it, they might think about retelling it as well, but then they're going to want to retell it. They're going to want to be part of this movement. So creating a nice ending that makes people feel good about sharing this message is like super important.
Yeah, definitely. Ending with something that is memorable, kind of, they can recall this great experience they had. And
yeah,
I have another question for you that, it taps into business storytelling, but is, I've been a client of your agency. And one thing I remember talking with you, it was, I was the audience, let's say, for your services. And I remember you are always available. So if I ask you something, I said, Rich, I need to, have a chat with you because there is an urgent meeting, or I can imagine this lady you were referring to in the presentation, right? That was happening, yesterday or this morning, whatever. And reaching you and, talking with you about the urgency I have, you are always understanding and say, yeah, let's meet, in tomorrow or, pretty soon. I don't remember any time where you were making me feel that it's not your priority to follow my request because you have other bigger priorities than mine. So I'm asking you, is because you're just a polite person, or is because you think that this is a very powerful way of making the audience, the audience feel that they are at the center of the story you want to create with them. I would like, that I really wanted to ask you this question because, or you don't have any project to work on, you are kind of completely free. So every time I called you, I was the only client, but it doesn't look like looking at the client you'll be working with. Yeah. So what's going on?
Thank you thanks. Firstly, that's nice to hear, but it's my favorite part of the job is talking to clients. So I'm easily distracted person, but I'm unlikely to be distracted from that because other sort of desk work excites me way less. So I'm always really interested to talk to clients. And the key to the job that we do is listening. And this is something that I've tried really hard to get better at. So at our agency, we relate the process of what we do to how a doctor would talk to a patient. We have a lot of medical clients, so it's a nice analogy. And the first thing the doctor does is take a history of the patient, like really understand, not how they're feeling, but what's been going on in the past, have their parents had any similar sort of things? And then you work on, diagnosing solutions, trying something, testing, measuring, and all that sort of stuff. So if you're consciously really trying to listen, that probably can give the impression that you're 100% focused because you're trying to be 100% focused. And that the thing that I've really practiced is when someone's talking and something pops into your head that you want to say, try to push that out of your head and really listen to them, because you're going to learn a lot more from listening than regurgitating whatever's just popped into your head. So, but that's something that I really consciously practice because I find it difficult not to just blurt things out.
Of course, and it looks like you're exercising well of listening, because I believe that this is also one of the secret behind and creating compelling stories for your clients, because you really understand the need behind them. Yeah. And another question I would have for you, since you've been working with so many clients, did it happen to you that the client had one story in mind and then deep dive a bit more on really the need for the audience to listen to that story, or the purpose that he wants to pass through that story is completely different? Is a kind of off track with what he or she has in mind, because she wants to say, as you said, how good she is, how good he is on doing something. And on the other side, there is no really purpose behind the story that he's creating. And if you have any example of that, and what would you do when a story doesn't have a why, but just focusing on the what and how to do that?
Yeah. It's quite a good indicator of what sort of company it is, like how forward-thinking they are. If they are trying to brief something that isn't really that compelling. And actually, during COVID, we noticed two groups of our clients during the lockdown. One group said, okay, everyone's working from home. It's going to be difficult to do marketing, especially say B2B marketing, where it's much more face-to-face. Let's just put everyone on furlough for 6 months and we'll take our marketing budget and we'll put it into profit. And bad news for us, by the way, when it happened. So,
I can imagine.
And my feeling was, okay, here's a company who doesn't really have an ongoing narrative that it wants to keep going. And it's probably got some other problems that it can kind of hide in this general, let's just write this year off and start again next year. But then some of our other clients have been really inspiring, and they've said, okay, great opportunity to to quadruple the speed at which we transform digitally, for example. So let's do more than ever. We're less distracted, and these are the sort of companies who, when you talk about their competitors, they say, honestly, we don't care. We're going to go past them so fast. We're going to be a blur. Like, we don't care. And being that sort of company is, or being in that sort of company is great, because you can feel it. You can feel an energy about it. And when you're in the other sort of company, you know it as well. So we to go back to your question, one tactic that we use when talking about trying to convince a client maybe to change from this story to something else, a tactic we can use is, let's take this opportunity to also motivate your staff. Let's do something that they can really get behind. And that works really well, because what you're not saying your idea is terrible, do our idea. You're saying, how can we turn this into something that really motivates staff? Because then what it's saying to them is this really exciting you? Because I don't think so. And it's not going to excite your staff. And it's what a great opportunity to do so. And it's more than a campaign which is going to turn a company from, same old stuff, paycheck at the end of the month, to we're doing something exciting here. But everyone wants to be in that category. So if you can relate it back to them, which goes back to the old, who we're really talking to here, if you can relate it back to them and say, well, what about your colleagues? Is this going to really make them super excited and want to come and pat you on the back? If not, why don't we do that? And and some companies have a great cause, and therefore people can kind of say, well, I like working for this company because it's saving lives, for example, and others do more commercial things. But even the companies with a great cause, they can still, in the way they do things, they can excite their employees. And it's so important. If you've got engaged, smart employees, then like magic happens. So that's one way we do it. Getting companies to say, no, this is wrong, we should do this. It's very difficult. So we have to sort of steer them a little bit.
I think we try on but I remember we try on our own skin, right? How to motivate people internally in the project. We were working together on to fuel the fire, right? That was really fueling the fire and the passion of the people working on that project to really make them feel unique, and everybody has a role on really fueling this fire. And that was really
another tactic. Another tactic that this is an example of me talking over you, not listening, but it's not easy. Another tactic is if a company feels like something's too risky, or no, man, of course that's good, and I could see Apple doing that, but we would never do it. You can say to them, how would you feel if your competitor did that? And they would be like, that would be bad. We would feel bad if our competitor did that. Well, they might. So that's another way of just saying, come on, it's not taking a risk can be a risk. Let's try something a little bit more bold.
Fantastic. So we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, even if, as I said, I would love to keep hearing your stories. And so in the, a bit more than 5 minutes we have left, coming back to the chef, analogy, or whoever you want to be, the expert or whatever, if consider your audience as an audience of people that would love to create, share, and tell a story that drive action, as you said, that really make an impact on the audience, which are for you the key takeouts, key actionable takeaways, let's say, that they should really write down and say, definitely I need to keep in mind these 3 bullet points when I'm going to create my next my next business story?
So I would say make it relate to their life. Ideally, that's based on an insight that you know that your audience, something that's on their mind that you can tap into. Because as soon as you do that, they all the emotion they already have around this topic or something, you know, you already have that, and now you just need to fuel that fire, to use your previous analogy.
Back to the analogy.
So really relate it to them. Get them to really like, oh God, that's, you know, don't be afraid to make them feel like pain as well as comfort, you know, because any sort of emotion is going to be a good starting point. Because then you can, whatever then happens, it's going to have an emotional reaction. Be surprising. And just so I'm not repeating myself, another example of this is, you know, don't be afraid of doing stuff that might not feel like, or saying things that might not feel like the obvious or the best thing to say. Because again, you don't need to say the obvious thing. And we did a workshop recently with a client, and they started off by writing ideas on Post-it notes and putting it up on the wall, very standard. And then they went round and put a star on the ideas they liked. And at the end, you could see there were lots of ideas with lots of stars. And then there was a few ideas with no stars. So the next thing we did is we took all of the good ideas off, put them in the bin because they're obvious. Everyone liked them. And we looked at the ones that nobody had liked because somebody was brave enough to put this idea on the wall. So there was something there. And everyone would, oh, that's a bit weird. And then we just worked on, let's dive into these ideas. There must be something there. And because they weren't immediately popular, they weren't that obvious. And then you find something really, really interesting. And if you're looking for a brainstorm, it's those ideas on the edge that you're looking for. It's those surprising things you would never have normally thought for. That's what you're looking for. The obvious stuff, you could just write a list yourself and save the, save the time. So try to find ways to be surprising and don't be afraid to try something, because you're already talking to an engaged audience by this stage, and why not? They're much more likely to remember it. A third one, I'll try to think of one that's not obvious. I'll try and be surprising.
You try to apply your 3 key takeouts on your business story today.
Exactly.
I love that. Exactly.
Okay, so here's one. Okay, here's one. You can tell me if this is a good one or not. I'm not sure yet. But if you're telling somebody something and they're not, it's not making the change that you want, stop telling them. Like, don't beat that dead horse. And I think there's 2 useful lessons in that. Is, I think some people will spend a lot of emotional and resources, trying to hammer home a message to people who don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So don't worry when that happens. It might be just this group of people are never going to be interested. So don't waste your money and your time. Focus on people who are going to be interested. Or get somebody else to try. Because sometimes whatever you're saying just won't resonate with someone, and it might be a chemistry thing or something like that. So don't be afraid to, you can't please everybody all the time. So
of course,
don't be afraid to just say, that's not working. I'm not going to get demoralized. I'm going to talk to this 80% of people who are getting really excited, and I'm going to get them more excited, and then they can tell my message, and then those people might hear it from somebody else, and we might get them in the end.
You asked me to tell you if the last example was not good. I think it's not good. I think it's brilliant what you just said. It's really, it's so right. And so many times we keep pushing and beat the dead horse, as you said. And we are surprised that no action will be taken. maybe we should really change the perspective. We look at, sometimes I look at things.
Yeah.
Brilliant, really, really. Rich, as I said, I would love to keep talking with you much more than this half an hour. And if you are available and fine, we're going to repeat this talk maybe later down in the future to listen some other key stories from you, some other takeouts, because really you're a source of inspiration for myself first, for the clients that I know you've been working with. And also I hope for the audience with the story you shared today and the three key ingredients to create this unique meal as a chef. So really, thank you very much for your time. I wish you,
my pleasure.
I wish all the best with your INL agency. Now we know the reason why this name came to life.
Keep that between the two of us.
Between of us, yeah. I will cut it. No worries. It will never be shared outside this call.
Oh, thank goodness.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Ciao. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.